Good morning and welcome to Passing Conversations. I'm Judy Ruth. This is Tracy Lee, funeral director of the Queen City Funeral Home here in East Texas. And we've been discussing funeral arrangements and services, and we're just asking her questions and she's answering them for us. I understand.
Trying to answer them.
She does a really, really good job. I've learned a lot. I hope you have too. She had a client in the other day that asked a question. I said, that's a good question. We need to save it for our next session. So here it is. So someone came in, a family or a client of yours came in and said, what happens if this place is hit by a tornado and destroyed? And what do you do in that situation? What happens and the funeral is happening, and are you able to embalm? Are you able to take care of things? So let's have the answer that you gave, or the right answer.
Okay.
Now that you had time to think about it.
Well, our area is known for tornadoes,
Right.
So it's a valid concern. And she came in with her mother. They were reviewing her pre-need, and so that's what she asked me. What happens if something devastating to your building happens? And so, of course, first I told her, well, I have insurance, you know? But it's a good question. So what would happen in that sort of circumstance is if something catastrophic were to happen to my building and I had clients who have pre-needs with me in need of services, then what would happen is funeral homes make alliances for that very situation. I could have machinery that goes down, you know, and put me in a bind. So you make alliances. So if something happens at my funeral home, I could call a funeral home that I have an alliance with and say, hey, this is my situation, can you help me out? And of course they would, because I would do the same thing for them. And so if my building were catastrophically injured or devastated, I would call up one of these alliance funeral homes and say, look, I have a decedent, can I come over and embalm them in your lab? And the answer would be yes. I would just go over and embalm them. Well, I would have no place to bring them back to, so I would also house them there until the service is ready. So I would just take a little part of their funeral home to work out of around them, you know, and take care of my clients. And then for the services, if the services were going to be at my funeral home, well, we would probably have them at that other funeral home, or I would rent a church or an event center or a hotel room, not a sleeping room, but those convention rooms, a convention room, or something like that. But we would make some sort of accommodation so that the funeral could still take place. Most likely, because of the area we're in the Bible Belt, it would be a church, because that's what people are comfortable with. We have an abundance of them available to us, and so it would probably be a church. Or even it could be a school auditorium. We do funerals quite often in school auditoriums. So there are all kinds of options that are available. It really is not a problem. Now, let's say that a tornado came through and it hit 2 funeral homes. So like the Alliance Funeral Home is not available, although you have more than one funeral home you're aligned with. There are businesses that are called mortuary services. And so they're trade companies, so it's like a wholesale retail kind of situation. So the funeral home would just call them up and say, hey, I have a decedent, they would either come by and pick them up from the house where they are, or the hospital, or we would just pick them up and take them to them. And they would embalm them from us, and if we needed to house them there in a refrigerator or something, we could do that. So those things are all taken care of. The funeral business has been around for a long time, and I think every catastrophe that could ever happen has happened, and so all of those contingencies are already orchestrated.
So you do have a plan B.
Absolutely.
worst case
Well,
scenario.
And with my husband, who's retired military, I have plan B, C, D, E, and F, and maybe even a G. So we have,
Well, good.
all
That's
kinds of stuff.
comforting to know. That was an interesting question. Now, the last time we talked, we talked about the things that you have, your inventory, the things you have here. That's a part of the pricing, and we're wondering if we could get some kind of ballpark figure of what funerals cost and what individually these inventory items cost. And
Sure.
you don't have to give us your price if you don't want to. Just give us a ballpark figure.
Sure. Well, each funeral home has, their prices vary because of their overhead, but and in as we spoke before, the Federal Trade Commission controls pricing and how you can price things. And so that one category where you have the funeral director and staff, that covers your overhead. That price, again, will vary depending on the size of the funeral home, the level of the funeral service. But you also can put part of your overhead in a casket price. So you may go to one funeral home where the casket is very low priced, but that money is then charged in a different category. So you may have a low casket price but a higher service price. But it may be where you have a lower service price but you have a higher casket price, because they're putting it wherever they want. They have two different places where they can put it. So those prices will vary depending on how they do their pricing structure. So for instance, at my funeral home, I do not put that price, those costs in my casket. I put it under where it says it is, because I don't want to hide it. I want you to know what you're paying for. So I put it under the funeral director and staff price. And I'm just looking to see if I have one of those price sheets with me. I thought I did, but I don't. Okay, so we'll look at it in my bundles, because I also do a thing called bundles, so that, because funeral pricing is so difficult to understand, what I do is I group it so that you can understand, oh, this is what a funeral costs, instead of...
Like a car, an RV, and a motorcycle, you bundled.
Yeah, well, what I did is, like, if you were to buy a car and you went in, all those extra things you add to them, I can't remember what that's called, like, air conditioning or a
well, I was thinking about
stereo.
insurance. When you bundle with insurance, if you have different vehicles and a home and everything, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
right. So what I do is I make these little bundles so that, for instance, on my bundles list, I have a traditional funeral service. And so in that, it shows you that the items that are listed are going to be the funeral director and staff, and it's going to give you that price.
And can you give us a ballpark figure?
Sure, you betcha. So at my funeral home, if you're going to come in and you're going to price this together, these elements are going to end up costing you $3,930. But that's going to include your funeral director and staff, which is $2,102. The local transfer, which is $463. Embalming, $781. Dressing and casketing, $48. The funeral service itself, $101. The hearse is $131. The utility van is $101, and the visitation is $202, for the total of $39.30.
I see.
So that's the stuff that the funeral home is going to provide. That's the total cost on that traditional funeral service. But that's not everything you need, because you need things from other people. Remember, we spoke about cash advance items, and those cash advance items are things like the preacher. Well, the preacher doesn't work for me, so I can't put his price in my price. The casket, I don't know what casket you're going to buy, because I have, like 150 caskets you can choose from, so I can't put that price in there because I can't choose your casket. The open and close of the grave, that's where a company that has like a backhoe and an elevator and a tent and the chairs and grass carpets and stuff, that's a whole different company. They're the ones who come in and dig your grave, which is called opening the grave, and they also close the grave, which means putting the earth back into the grave itself. That's a different company. I can't put their price in here because depending on which cemetery you choose, depends on which open and close service you're going to use. A private cemetery has their own services. They're usually more expensive, and they will do the open and close. They don't allow other companies to come into their property and do that.
So let me quickly ask you a quick question. Do we pay you for that service? Did they charge you and then we pay you, or do we have to find them and pay them?
Well, that is a
cemetery.
very good question. Okay, so when it comes to cash advance items, you have the choice of selecting your own services except for your open and close. And the reason for that is insurance. My insurance company says, we're going to insure you to work with this company because they're a valid company and we can trust them. We've checked them out. So if you're using an open and close service, you will use this company. However, if you're going into a private cemetery that has their own open and closing, that private cemetery insures their open and closer. So at that point, my insurance company doesn't insure that service because it's a private service. They have their own service. So if I'm going into a private cemetery, their insurance covers it. If I'm going into a non-private cemetery, my insurance has to cover their service. And so although that company carries their own insurance, that open and closing company carries their own insurance, I have to carry a malpractice insurance, and my malpractice insurance would cover if they did something that, was awry. Their insurance, the client would sue their insurance company, but my insurance, my malpractice insurance, would cover me in case I were sued.
I
So
understand.
it's just, it's crazy.
Whoever your insurance, whoever you're covered by, that's who determines where.
It depends. Yeah,
That has a lot to do with it.
I have to use this company because I'm contracted with them, and my insurance company has accepted them as a good company, a company that does good work.
Okay, so do you want to go
So-
down the list, or
Yeah.
can we talk about coffins?
Oh, sure, you can talk about that.
Okay, so I know you can probably get them online.
Yes, you can.
What is the problem or the advantage of that?
Well, have you ever ordered something from Amazon and you get it and it's not exactly what you expected or anything near what you
Yeah.
expected, right? So, although you order a lot of things on Amazon that are fabulous, but it's hard to tell from a picture what you're really looking at, So if it's an actual reputable casket company that you're ordering from, I don't see a problem with that, The only issue is that delivery is the logistics of it can be a problem. And what I'm saying about that is, say you order a casket from a different casket company and they deliver it to my funeral home. First of all, you're going to have to pay delivery. Well, when they get here, that casket is crated. I can't accept a crated casket. So now that trucking company that brought it, they can't uncrate it because it's not covered by their insurance, nor is it covered by my insurance. So now you have a casket that is here that I can't accept because of crating issues. And that's usually something that you wouldn't be aware of,
No, why can't you open it? Why can't you just bust it open?
Because it could be damaged.
Oh.
So the uncrating could damage the casket, and my insurance won't cover that. So I cannot uncrate it. Not only that, let's say the trucking company will uncrate it, they usually will not take the crating materials. I can't accept the crating materials. I'm not a garbage disposal for a refuge center. I can't accept that because I have no place to store it or to any way to get rid of it. So now you have another problem, how to get rid of all that crating material. And all of that falls on the client because it's their item. It's not my item, and it's not the trucking company's item. It's their item. So now they're dealing with a death and all the craziness that goes with that, and now they have to deal with this this issue with the casket. I have received caskets from other sources. You can get them from a casket store. The casket store, usually they're already uncrated. They will deliver it, and so you can do that. So, but there are all kinds of ways to get caskets. I think that some big box stores even sell caskets. There again, you're going to have a delivery and a crating issue. But I have received caskets from other places where people have done that. The crating issue is always a problem. I've received some from casket stores that they deliver, and most often it's not a problem. However, sometimes it is. Some of the problems that I've experienced with that is, let's see, we had one casket that wouldn't open.
Oh dear.
Then we had one casket that wouldn't close. We had one that would open and close, but it wouldn't stay open. So you would walk up to it and it would slam shut.
Oh, that's just plain spooky.
Yeah, there are all kinds of issues with it. So if I get it from my casket company and there's a problem with it, well, they immediately bring me another one, switch it out, or come in and fix it. I've received some that have come in from other sources that are dented. They like a car's been in a crash. It's all dented up. Some of them are scratched up. It's not always the case, but sometimes it is. And if it's your case, it's devastating.
Right.
So it's just, if you at all can get your casket from the funeral home, I would suggest that. Mm-hmm. But it's not required by law. You have the option to buy it somewhere else.
So
one of the other issues that you'll run into, is now, like in my casket price, that includes the wear and tear of my equipment to function with that casket. For instance, my casket beer, every time you put a casket on it, it depreciates in value. So if you're going to bring your casket in from somewhere else, do you have a casket beer to use, or
is this a dolly?
Yeah, it's like the dolly that it sits on. Yeah.
Right.
Or if you're going to use my casket beer, then you're going to be subject to that charge that's going to depreciate on my casket beer. So there are other things that go into it. It's not just a casket. The casket has to be transported. It has to sit somewhere. It has to move. There's all kinds of things that go with it. So, and all of those expenses fall on you if you purchase a casket elsewhere, and those problems with it.
So if I had it delivered to my house and asked you to come pick it up, there'd be a charge for that. There'd be a transporting charge, correct?
Right, which I would not.
Oh, you
pick it
wouldn't?
up. I don't pick up caskets. Caskets are delivered to me.
Oh, okay.
I don't have the machinery or the vehicles to go pick up your casket. So that would be another, if you had it delivered to your house, you'd have a real problem.
Not to mention what the neighbors would think.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be kind of funny for them. A little bit scary.
All right, let's see. Do you have any kind of refund cancellation policy or anything when you with this insurance? We talked about the insurance, that the pre-need. If I get halfway in it and go and move to another state, Alaska, can I cancel the insurance?
Yes, you
can I get a
always
refund or
cancel
anything?
your insurance. There's a cash value on every insurance policy, and you would be subject to that cash value. Now, again, you're dealing with a company that's in business to make a profit, and if you cancel your product, they're going to ensure that they don't take a loss. So in that you're canceling that, they will take out their fees for all kinds of stuff. And I'm just guessing on this. Probably fees for bookkeeping and maintenance of the product, of their policies, and tracking it. All of those, the cost of doing business, you would be subject to. So you would most likely get less than you've paid, especially if you're making payments, because you're paying that finance fee, and then you're paying the upkeep, the maintenance fee on it. So you could call them and see what your cash value is, but what would be a better solution for you? Because when you take it out now, you're subject to taxes too, and Medicaid by spend downs and stuff. So what would be a better option for you would be to leave that with the insurance company, because you've already invested it. It's not going to affect your Medicaid qualifications or your taxes. Leave it there. because insurance policies are assignable. So if you purchased it from me, but you go to another funeral home, just like with your car, when you're doing, if you had a car wreck and you needed to have your car repaired in New York or wherever you moved, you could still use your insurance policy. So you could still use that insurance policy for your funeral, but they're not obligated to follow the same as I do, because my expenses are so low. They may have higher expenses. So you could leave that there, and then when you get to where you're going, you could say, okay, I'm here now. What are the differences in cost that you have? And then you could buy a new policy, and so now you have two policies that you can use to your, if you have a $5,000 policy here, you can use that towards your funeral there. So you may only need to do a $5,000 policy with them, or less or more, who knows. But I would suggest leaving it because it's protected. And so, and you can use it, you can assign it to the new funeral home. You don't have to leave it with my funeral home. If you buy insurance from me, it's good anywhere.
So even if it's in the state of Texas, and I move to Alaska,
Yep.
they will accept it there.
Yes,
probably.
because it's your money. Has been set aside for your funeral. So that was like the thing with my grandmother. When my grandmother passed in California and her policy was in Louisiana, we needed to access that policy and use it for the services in California. We did have problems with that funeral home, which eventually that funeral home went out of business and ended up the owner being in prison from doing crazy things like that.
Right.
But that's why, again, I suggest that you use an insurance company for your funeral needs instead of a trust-funded policy.
Wow, our time is gone fast.
I know, and all of this is so confusing, and I'm really sorry for it. But
you told us what that first fee, that $3,000.
yes, the $2,100.
Yeah. Okay, but would you go over just a little slower? What is the embalming? Is embalming $400?
Embalming is $781.
Okay,
So the fees are, okay, so first you have the funeral director and staff, which was the $2,100.
Right.
Then you have the local transfer. That's where you call us, and we go out and pick up your decedent and transfer them out of your custody into our custody. So that's called local transfer. That's
what if I'm like somewhere else and have to be flown in? Do you take care of that as well?
Yes. Okay, let's say that you're on vacation and you passed in Alabama. Okay.
Big vacation.
They have a coastline.
That's true.
So you pass in Alabama, which is more than 40 miles away from my funeral home. So what would happen is I would call a trade company there to go and pick you up, so that you're not just sitting at the hotel or wherever you are. So this company would go and first call. They would pick you up and take you to their facility. I would also have you embalmed there, because they can't bring you back to Texas across multiple state lines without embalming you. And then I would transfer you to my funeral home. So you would incur some extra fees because you've not paid for those things, but you've already paid for a first call. And so if their first call is the same as my first call, that's what it would stay the same.
Wash.
You know, so as long as the expenses are the same, they're the same. So. So I would have all that done and bring you here, and then from here we would start, dressing and casketing and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so overall, everything, what do you think? Ballpark figure, 5,000 to...
For if you die somewhere else, or if you die
I'm talking
here?
about the funeral services, funeral cost.
So for a
Because
traditional...
we're about out of time, just sum it up.
Okay, for a traditional funeral service, including embalming, viewing or visitation, and funeral, the funeral home costs are $39.30.
Right.
You would add to that the open and close at the graveyard. My guys charge $750.
Okay.
And then you would add your casket. I have caskets starting at $800. So you're about $5,000. If you don't do anything extravagant, you can do that for about $5,100.
Okay.
But if you choose a $5,000 casket, then you're going to pay for that. But yeah, so just a typical traditional American funeral service at my funeral home with a moderate casket and open and close and everything, about $5,000.
Oh, and what do you think other people charge?
Well, locally or in the area, let's say within a 50-mile radius.
Are you like middle of the road,
I'm low.
lower than most? Okay.
Yeah. So if within a 50-mile radius, those funerals could cost, that same funeral could cost you upwards of $16,000 to $20,000.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So.
All right, that gives us an idea, and we're about out of time because we wanted to keep this about 30 minutes. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you being here. Passing Conversations, did you have something else?
Yes, I'm sorry. I do need to say that pricing is predicated on a price sheet and the date on a price sheet. So as of this date,
That's what
that would be the pricing. But
we might
you
want
know,
to put it
next year it could be higher, or
Right.
next month it could be. You just don't know.
Right. It definitely won't go down, though. It won't go down, right?
Actually, I did. Well, with the election, there were some. Some things lowered in price. So yes, our prices did go down.
Oh, good.
With the election.
All right. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll keep doing this. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.